Welcome to Front Office Pros. As of right now, we are on the cusp of the NFL Tampering Period, and you Dynasty owners may be wondering if your player signs somewhere else, will his fantasy value increase or decrease? But with me is Dustin Ludke, and then a first-time guest on Front Office Pros, which is none other than Alex PeakedInHighSkool. Alex is well known in the fantasy football community with his monthly trade value charts, and he recently has joined the team at Draft Sharks. Alex, congrats, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to hop on here. Dustin, he's like, man, you gotta join these guys and hang out with them. So I'm excited to spend some time with you guys today.
Well, we are just as excited. So for this roundtable discussion, we're going to be using Alex's March version of his Superflex Dynasty trade value chart as a baseline for player valuations. We're going to give you our opinion on whether their value will increase or decrease depending on what happens in free agency. If you want to see his full chart, you can find it on his website, and there will be a link below in the description. Today, we're going to be talking about the NFL free agency preview for Dynasty quarterbacks and how these free agent quarterback values could fluctuate depending on what happens in free agency. Before we get started, we're asking you to write in the comments below which quarterback do you think will increase their value the most.
Hike!
The first quarterback we'll be discussing is quarterback Lamar Jackson, who was just tagged with the non-exclusive tag. There's been much speculation of where Lamar would play next season due to some cryptic social media posts, him being his own agent, and lip service comments made by the Baltimore Ravens front office. On Alex's Superflex Dynasty trade chart, Lamar Jackson has a value of 75 points, which is ahead of Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, and Dak Prescott, but behind Justin Herbert, Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence. Alex, based on what happens to Lamar Jackson in free agency, do you envision his value to increase or decrease?
So even just looking at his value last week, or let's see, 14 days ago when I ran the model last, he's gone down 7 points. And the only thing that has changed is that he got tagged. So the market, which is what these charts are, is a snapshot of. These aren't my personal ranks. They are an aggregate of outside sources that I then run through a model. They've already baked in his value going down 7 points. It seems likely that if he stays with the Ravens, he signs a deal. You know, maybe Atlanta makes a contract offer. The Ravens match it. He's there for 3 years, $150 million, something like that. I expect his value to go back up to 7 points. He'd probably be maybe right behind Justin Herbert or above Justin Fields would be my guess. Let's say he goes to a different team. I don't see him necessarily. I don't know of any team out there that I would expect him to really increase just because I expect his 2023, no matter what, will be depreciated or a little bit lower, even if he goes to the Jets or somewhere that's a little bit more interesting. Just that transition period, I find it hard to believe that he'll go up a lot in actual value. He might in market perception. I expect him to be probably staying in that tier 2 zone between Justin Fields, Lawrence, Dak Prescott, that kind of area. I expect him to, almost no matter what happens, to stay in that area, maybe bounce around a little bit, unless he retires or sits out, I guess.
I personally think his value drops. So you had said that his value dropped 7 points based on him being tagged. I think that's the perception that he's going to stay on Baltimore. I think his value went up because everybody thought he might go to a different team. He might go to Atlanta, who has Pitts in London. He might go to the Jets, who have, Elijah Moore and, Garrett Wilson. I think him being on the Ravens is the worst spot for him personally because they have no weapons. He does well there, and we've seen him do very well on there. He had an MVP season with the Ravens. But I think this is just the start of his value dropping a little bit. He gets tagged, it goes drops 7 points, basically saying, hey, the possibility of him staying on the Ravens is now increased. Once he's fully on the Ravens, which is where I expect him to be, I think it drops more. I think he drops still in that. I think he's in the bottom of that tier 2 for you. I think he drops below Dak Prescott, probably right above Tua.
Interesting. See, when it comes to Lamar Jackson, I'm all over the place when it comes to him. As I dig deeper into his value, personally, there was a part of me before digging into him as a player, I thought that his value would increase in the event that he'd go somewhere else. But looking more into it, per Pro Football Focus, Baltimore had the second best offensive line in the league in 2022. So obviously he had a great offensive line to help him. Plus the offense has really placated to him over these past few years. So what would it look like to go to a completely new offense? Now, Greg Roman's not going to be there anymore. Todd Monken, who's been with Georgia for the past, I think, 2 seasons, is now coming on board. So that offense is going to look different. But outside Lamar's MVP season, he's not thrown over 3,000 yards, and he's not thrown over 30 touchdowns. So, and he was top 5 in rushing attempts and top 3 in rushing yards. So to me, I feel like Baltimore might be the best place for him. I think Alex was saying something, though, that I agree. I think where maybe his value could increase is market perception, and that subjectivity of if he goes to a new place, there's going to be people that will flock to it just because it's new. So I'm kind of torn between whether I think it will increase or decrease. A part of me says it might just stay the same, especially if he goes to Baltimore. If he goes to another team, I think at the end of the day, his value may increase initially because of market perception, but then eventually I think will then decrease.
I won't project him for more, but market perception wise, value wise, he might still go up just because people might be more interested in him.
Yeah, the hype for him will go up if he goes to a new team, and his value, because these are an aggregate of market values, his market value will go higher, but his production's not going to change.
Honest, I think Baltimore's the best place for him. I think he would go back up there. I like the exact opposite of Dustin on that, but everything else we agree on.
So the next quarterback we'll be discussing is quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. After being demoted as the starter in 2022, he was thrust back into the starting role for San Francisco until he ended on injury reserve with a broken foot injury. On Alex's Superflex Dynasty trade chart, Jimmy Garoppolo has a value of 18 points, which is ahead of only Desmond Ridder and Zach Wilson, but behind Ryan Tannehill, Brock Purdy, and Jordan Love. Dustin, let's start with you. Based on what happens to Jimmy Garoppolo in free agency, do you envision his value to increase or decrease?
I think it increases, and I think it increases a lot. I think he goes to the Raiders. I think he becomes a starter this year. I think his value right now is in that backup with potential to start range, right? He's behind Jordan Love, who's probably going to start for the Packers if they don't get Rodgers, behind Brock Purdy, who may start, may not start. I think he goes up easily into that range with the Geno Smith, the Derek Carr, the Russell Wilsons, who are, are starters, right? And I think that's the problem right now is people go, Jimmy G might be a backup. He might be a starter. We don't know. But I think he signs. And I think he signs on to be a starter. There's only a handful of QB positions left open, and there's only a smaller number in my mind of viable QBs left. So I think he gets a starting job. Even if it is a bridge for 1 year, I think he gets a starting job in 2023. So his value will increase a ton. So he's a major buy for me right now in Dynasty leagues.
Yeah, I would say his 2023 value, if we were looking just at that, should go up for sure. I think I would be surprised if he did. Raiders, great spot. The Jets would be reasonable too if they don't get Aaron Rodgers. Panthers, somewhere like that. And if one of those happens, I would see him aggressively jumping to at least around the Matthew Stafford level. So from 18 to 24, 25. I don't think he would get above Mac Jones or into like that Jared Goff to Geno Smith tier, just because I think Geno Smith, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, Pickett, Rodgers, and Goff, they're all projecting for multiple years more of starters. And I would just kind of be surprised if Garoppolo is more than that bridge where they would also try and get a rookie or someone else. Just so for a long-term dynasty outlook, 2-3 years past 2023, probably the between Mac Jones and Matthew Stafford type area. But let's say he doesn't get that starter role, then he just drops, right? Like he ends up back. Yeah. Let's see who's someone that you could be behind. Patrick Mahomes. That for some reason they sign him to be the backup for the Chiefs, right? His value goes to Zach Wilson levels probably. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are a lot higher than I am on Jimmy Garoppolo. I'll just put that out there. To me, I think his value increases. I don't disagree with you there. I think it definitely will increase, but I think it may only leapfrog the 2 guys that you have in your chart. So I think he will increase above Ridder, and I think he'll increase above Wilson. He'll increase above Tannehill and Purdy. My bad. He's already ahead of Ridder and Wilson. He'll be ahead of Tannehill and Purdy. But I think Love most likely it seems like Aaron Rodgers is on the way out. So I think Love's going to get an increase, and then I think that Jimmy G is going to get an increase, but I think Love is going to outpace Jimmy G. So to me, I think he's only going to leapfrog 2 people. When it comes to Jimmy Garoppolo, he's only played in a full season, you could argue, twice in his entire career. So he's very injury prone. And the best season he's ever had was back in 2019, where he was the QB 14. And he had Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Emmanuel Sanders. And the time that he's been in San Francisco, he has had the benefit of being around a great supporting cast. Not only the offensive line, a great defense that shuts other teams down so they get the ball back, and then all those weapons. So to me, even if he were to go to the Raiders, to me, the supporting cast he has is worse than the supporting cast he had with San Francisco. So although I think the value increases, I caution, and I think market perception will also have it increase. But to me, I think there will be a market correction down the road, and I'm not going to ride the wave that I think Jimmy G is going to get.
I expect you're right. I think he will peak and then drop back down once people see him play.
So this last round is a speed round. So I'm going to list out 5 free agent quarterbacks that are currently a 0 value on Alex's Superflex Dynasty trade chart. So they don't even show up there. So quickly give me which quarterback you believe has the best potential for increased value depending on what happens in free agency. So we've got Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Carson Wentz, Jameis Winston, which all reports are indicating that he'll get released as a cap casualty. So we're including him. And then Marcus Mariota.
I think the most interesting one to me is Jameis Winston, assuming he actually gets cut, which he seems like he will be. We've seen Sam Darnold for a long time. We've absolutely seen Carson Wentz and Marcus Mariota for long times. Baker is probably my second most interesting one, just because I think he could end up signing again with the Rams as a backup. And then Stafford, who has been out for several games almost every year, right? And he's just old. Like he's getting older. Baker is interesting to me, but I think Jameis Winston has one of the most opportunities to maybe be a starter for whichever team doesn't end up with someone more interesting. But it's still like, I don't think I would be excited for Jameis Winston on the Panthers or whatever. Like it would be more than 0.
For me, it's Carson Wentz. I think he has the potential to be the best quarterback in the right situation. I think Arizona makes sense for one of these guys. Right, Kyler Murray's probably out for a good chunk of the season, if not all season. And Carson Wentz can come in and win you some games, but not put you in potential to like be a playoff team, right? So if you're the Cardinals, it's a lost season. If you're another team that's bringing one of these guys, you're probably either thinking lost season and quote unquote rebuild for Caleb Williams or rebuild till your guy gets back. So I can see Arizona bringing in Carson Wentz, let him go out there for 8-10 games, maybe win 5 of them. He plays decently, he just has some boneheaded mistakes, but he can definitely win you some games and put you in a decent position. So you're not like, you're not 0-16 or 0-17, but you can be 5-5 when your main starter comes back. I think he's the perfect fit for something like that. So he's the guy that I think could potentially jump up. Market value won't be there because I think people hate on Carson Wentz, but I think he should have the most value.
So I did not expect that point from you, Dustin. That is very interesting as far as Arizona being a good landing spot, depending on who goes there. But as a quick rundown for me, Mariota is a definite no. I think this was his last opportunity to have a starting job in the league. His best season was 15th. He was a QB 15 back in 2016. Hard to believe it. It's like you don't realize how long Mariota and Winston have been in the league for. So he's a no-go. Darnold, his best ever season was QB 25 in 2018. So Darnold is an absolute no. So then it comes down to me, Winston, Wentz, and Baker. I agree with, I like Alex's point as far as Winston, because Winston has had that ceiling where he was the QB4 in 2019 and Wentz was the QB5 in 2017. So they have that, they've shown that ability in their career to be a QB1. Now the question is, do either of them get a starting role? Wentz has had 3 in the past 3 years on different teams. So to me, it's like, will he really get a 4th? I feel like that would be an extreme anomaly for him to be a starter for yet another 4th team. And then as far as Winston goes, he's a weird one because, he was in Tampa Bay. Then he kind of took like a red shirt, kind of like, let me learn behind Drew Brees to eventually become the starter. And then things never really panned out for him. So, would he get a crack at a starting job? I don't know. So I think at the end of the day, by default, even though Baker's best season was a QB 16, it's not great. I feel like he has the best shot at being a starter. And in my mind, my hope is he goes back to LA. I know that's considered a backup type of role, but I'm very concerned about Matthew Stafford going forward with that back injury. I know he says he's not retiring and he's not coming back, but one bad hit and it's done. So, I mean, to me, I'm very concerned about Stafford moving forward. So to me, by default, I go Baker, but I'm not like that jazzed about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're not excited about any of these guys, right? Like, even if they have a starting role, they're probably a bottom 5 starter in the league and for your fantasy team. But in a Superflex league, those guys are valuable, and even backups are super valuable in Superflex. So it's worth monitoring, right? And if someone goes to a situation, right, Arizona, LA, right, those guys are going to play probably a significant number of games this year.
So that does it for our NFL free agency preview for quarterbacks. We just went over some of the most prominent free agent quarterbacks available and how their fantasy value could change depending on what happens to them in free agency. If you enjoyed this content, we ask you to please like this video, comment below, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also recently have joined Apple and Spotify podcasts, so follow us there as well. Before we go, Alex, where can others find your great work?
Yeah, you can find a lot of my work over at just PeakedInHighSkool.com. School is spelled with a K. The SC spelling was taken a long time ago, so I had to spell it wrong. Or right, depending on your definition. You can also find a lot of cool content over at Draft Sharks. I just released my aggregate rookie model score article this week. So you can see how each of these break up, each rookie is ranked based on film, analytics, all of that kind of aggregated together. It's pretty cool. I spent a lot of time on it. So check that out as well.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I definitely encourage all of you who are watching to check that out. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time.